This series that we've jumped into coming out of the book of Revelation has been fun in the study process, has been interesting and intriguing as we've been diving into it. And today I'm going to continue with looking at one of the letters written in the book of Revelation to one of the seven churches. This morning, we're going to focus on a church called Sardis. Last week was Pergamum. Obviously, we talked a lot about weighty stuff there, about continuing to follow Jesus, even when like culture and everything around you is saying don't. This morning, we're going to look at Sardis. Sardis, maybe the thing that overarching theme that we will look at and understand here it's the reminder, the caution to not allow the appearance of a spiritual life become a substitute for the reality of one. Sardis is an interesting message here that Jesus writes to them. But before I read it, I just want to remind us, what is the point of these letters? Why was this written in the book of Revelation? Why are we reading it? Why are we considering what it says for us even today, 2,000 or 1,900 years later? And it's simply this purpose. The purpose of it was to preserve the church until Christ returns. We know through the book of Revelation that Jesus is coming back. And the book of Revelation, and specifically even these letters, speak to the fact that Christ wants his church preserved until he returns. So if you have your Bible, open with me to the book of Revelation. We're going to jump into chapter 3. We're going to read verses 1 through 6. This is what the text says. Write this letter to the angel of the church in Sardis. This is the message from the one who has the sevenfold Spirit of God and the 7 stars. I know all things you do, and that you have a reputation for being alive, but you are dead. Wake up. Strengthen what little remains, for even what is left is almost dead. I find that your actions do not meet the requirements of my God. Go back to what you heard and believed at first. Hold to it firmly. Repent and turn to me again. If you don't wake up, I will come to you suddenly as an unexpected thief. Yet there are some in the church in Sardis who have not soiled their clothes with evil. They will walk with me in white, for they are worthy. All who are victorious will be clothed in white. I will never erase their names from the book of life, and I will announce before my Father and his angels that they are mine. Anyone with ears to hear must listen to the Spirit and understand what he is saying to the churches. Jesus, I thank you for your word today. I thank you that you're going to speak to us. I pray that our ears are open to hear what you are saying to the churches. I pray, God, that our hearts are open to know if it is something that's dealing with something we're walking through right now. So I pray for open hearts and open minds to the text, that you allow it to transform us, mold us, shape us into who you've called us to be. In your name, amen. As we get into the text, we'll see this morning that the church in Sardis and the city of Sardis have a lot in common. And the same reality that was being true about the city is being true about the church. Sardis had a reputation. And its reputation, what people knew of Sardis, was that it was alive. If you were to ask the people around who didn't live in Sardis, tell me about the church in Sardis, they would say, man, that place is alive. They're doing so good right now. They had a certain reputation for that. They look the part, which some think looking the part is good enough. They looked the part. It was good enough to fool others, but it did not fool Jesus. This is an important distinction about what's happening in Sardis. They had the reputation of being alive, but Jesus says, you are dead. The church in Sardis was about 40 years old at the time of this writing. And I imagine when they first started 40 years prior, I imagine the people had been followers of Christ in Sardis for those 40 years and those that had joined the church over the time frame. I imagine there was something about them that when they first began to follow Jesus, that they were in love and fully committed and blown away by the experience of what they had. But something over those 40 years began to shift their perspective. Because along the way, what we discover through this letter, through the words of Christ, is that they lost their passion. And it almost appears as though they are now simply a church going through the motions. Tells us something. It teaches us something. And that is, you can't live on yesterday's faith. I don't know if you know this or not about me, but I'm an athlete. I'm going to prove it to you. Okay? For all you naysayers out there. Rude, right? When I was 4 years old, I ran really fast, and I would race kids really fast. And I won most of my races. That really helped me out when I was a kid, because running fast translated well to athletes. I was a backyard football player. Played kickball sometimes. We'll get to soccer in a minute, because I did that as well. That would be my favorite sport. I also played street hockey. That's actually how I chipped my front tooth. Somebody hit me in the face with a hockey stick. Yeah. Athlete, obviously. I don't know why y'all laughed. I'm still offended by it. Because eventually I started playing travel soccer. I'm 10 years old, travel soccer. Okay? In high school, I started all 4 years. For 3 of those years, I was the captain of my soccer team. My senior year, we were in the state tournament, one of the top 8 teams in the state. Wait, check it out. I even played in college for like 6 weeks while I could have quit, because I just had to work and I couldn't afford to not go to work. And that's how I know I'm an athlete, guys. And for those of you that laughed at the beginning, you're like, wait a second, man, wasn't that like 25 years ago? Yep. Some of you are like, wait a second, you spent more of your life not being an athlete than you did of being an athlete, and somehow still you're calling yourself an athlete? Just because I was an athlete doesn't mean I'm still an athlete, huh? And just because I used to follow Jesus doesn't mean I still follow Jesus. I wonder how often the distinction that we make is that we mistake past faithfulness for current surrender. We mistake a previous commitment for current faithfulness. What's happening to the church in Sardis is exactly that. They have a reputation for what they once were. They have a reputation for the faithfulness they once had. But it is a past tense term in their life. But they're still acting like it's current. That's the warning that we're dealing with in Sardis. It's actually difficult to understand, because the church in Sardis finds itself in a position that actually the city itself was in as well. Like, I remember I said there's some similarities between the two. So let's talk about the city of Sardis real quick. The city of Sardis was, in the ancient world, they were one of the most wealthy and powerful cities in their day. Like, in their heyday, man, they were killing it. They were located close alongside like a riverbank that had massive amounts of gold deposits in it. And so Sardis ended up becoming wealthy because of that. And they were one of the earliest centers for minting coins in their time. Lots of trade came through it. Similar to Pergamum, which we talked about last week. If you missed that, you can go online and check it out. But similar to Pergamum, they also won the Neokoros Award from Rome. They won it twice as well. Now, Pergamum's was a little bit more substantial because Pergamum was the first to win it twice, but also Sardis won that. They had a temple to Artemis in Sardis, and it was the 8th largest of its kind in the Greek world in the day. And in addition to that, it was twice the size of the Parthenon in Athens. So they had some stuff going on. But by the time this letter, the book of Revelation and the letter to Sardis was written, Sardis at this point is simply living on past glories. And all indications state that they were in the early stages of decline by this point. And what we need to understand and consider from this is inherited wealth is a lot like inherited faith. If it's not tended to properly, it simply decays. The Bible's full of language that reminds us of this truth, of what it means to have a personal faith. What it means that you just don't live on a faith of previous years or of previous generations, but something that happens now. Maybe the most understood one, most seen one, is found in the Old Testament regarding the manna. Many of you in this room would already know the story of the Israelites leaving Egypt, coming out of slavery to go enter into the promised land. Most people would know that they entered into this situation where they wandered the wilderness for 40 years before they could enter in because of a multitude of issues. But the difficulty with that is because they're wandering around in the deserts, they're nomads, they don't have food to eat. So what are they going to do? Sit out there and starve and die. So what does God do? God decides to feed them. He feeds them manna. It's like a coriander seed that falls on the ground. And so they would go out in the morning and they would collect the manna. God's instruction to them was simply this, is when you go out and collect the manna, collect enough for that day, no more. So they go out and they collect the manna. They have food to eat. It's great. And then people are like, no. We got to go out and we got to collect this manna for enough for a couple days or a week even. Let's collect as much as we can and hold on to it so it'll be enough for tomorrow and the following day. And what they learned is when they collected the manna that was only intended to last for one day and they kept it for more than a day, it rotted overnight. The only day that it sustained itself more than one day was when the Sabbath rolled around, because they couldn't go collect it on Sabbath day. The point is the manna was designed to be, to go out and to retrieve it daily, not weekly, not monthly. That God will feed them, but they must go retrieve it each and every day. So let me ask you a question here, is when it comes to your walk with Jesus, are you trying to survive on yesterday's manna, on yesterday's revelation, on the thing God did for you 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Are you trying to survive on the Bible reading that you did when you were a teenager, now you're in your 40s and your 50s? Are you trying to survive on the passion that you had then, on the sacrifice that you did then, on the generosity that you had then? Are you living on yesterday's manna? Are you embracing that God has something for you today? Are you a Christian today because your grandfather was a Christian, because your grandmother was a Christian, because you were a Christian when you were in high school? Or are you still following Jesus? Do you have a faith yourself today? It's so easy for us to allow an inherited prestige mask our current weaknesses. Sardis looked like they had it going on. Sardis looked like they had it together. If Sardis' neighbor was talking about Sardis, man, Sardis is killing it. But God saw something different there. In the New Testament, Luke 9:23 through 25, let me read it to you. It says, "Then he said to the crowd, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way. You must take up your cross daily." Everybody say daily. He doesn't say weekly. He doesn't say monthly. He doesn't say occasionally. He doesn't say on Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter. He says you must pick up your cross daily and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you will save it. And what do you benefit if you gain the whole world, but are yourself lost or destroyed? Jesus says, daily pick up your cross and daily deny your own way. When we neglect the teaching of Christ in this text, we will find ourselves in the same danger that the church of Sardis is in. Because here's what we know. If you remember last week, Jesus was rebuking for some pretty outright sinful things that were going on in their midst. But the message to Sardis feels different. Because Jesus isn't rebuking them for some kind of compromise or outright immorality. Sardis wasn't rebuked for that. Their issue was simply spiritual inattentiveness. They looked healthy, but in reality, they were dead, surviving on inherited momentum, on something that once was. Now, as I'm reading this letter, I think about what it means for me as an individual Christian, but I also couldn't help but think of what it means for a church, for our church. Because just like individuals can't live on yesterday's faith, neither can our church. We can't live on yesterday's manna. I think about the reputation of Rice City Church, and I'm so thankful that we have a good reputation. I'm so thankful of the significant things that we've done in the name of Jesus over the years of our church. The blessings we've been able to have towards the people in this region. But if we ever decide to live off of yesterday's successes and sacrifices, we will end up finding ourselves in the same place as the church in Sardis was in. For those of you who don't know, the story of Rise was in 2013. A few families moved to San Diego and they planted this church. And when they planted this church, there were times when they would meet out of a Chick-fil-A and they would eventually meet out of a school. They would hand out ice cream at community events. They would give to the community projects. And they would we just, as a church, showed up for people here in East County and all around the world. 3 years into that, the Church of Harvest Church felt led to give this building to Rice City Church. And they felt led to, many of them, join Rice City in what God was doing here. And so growth, expansion, renovations, that all marked that season of our church. The programs were running and the ministries were expanding. That's what was happening. Now let me ask you a question. How easy would it be to decide that that's enough? That we've made it? That we've arrived? What else do we need to do? Let's put this sucker in cruise control and let's just coast down the mountain from here. So easy we could decide that. I wonder at what point in time does Sardis live that way? That they were like, look how great God's doing good stuff, man. Look how generous we are to the world because we're wealthy here. Look at all the things that are working well for us and we're just now in cruise control. How long can you coast in cruise control till you find yourself not moving anymore, but you're under the illusion that you still are? Because what happens when we think we've made it is that there is no more need to believe God for the new thing that he is doing. Because we've convinced ourselves that we've already arrived. That thinking creeping in will lead the church to the same place Sardis was. And that place was looking alive, but spiritually dead. Let Rice City never become a church like that. One that had a rich history, but lacked a present obedience. And here's the deal about that spiritual decline, is it actually happens silently. It's not suddenly, it's not like boom, it just hits you. It's just through gradual neglect over time. This is what it looks like. It looks like prayer that becomes transactional. I only go to God in prayer when I need something from him. Almost like it's mechanical because it lacks true intimacy with God. That's what it looks like. It looks like this. It's conviction that yields itself to convenience. I don't want to do that because it seems too difficult. I'll choose the easy route or the simple route or the route that looks best for me. If God asked you to do something that made it harder for you, would you listen? That's the question that we would have to wrestle with. And I imagine that was the question that Sardis answered and said, you know what? Nah, I'll choose convenience over conviction. It's spiritual attentiveness turning into apathy. I would call it a hollow faith. I remember when I was a kid, and it's like my most earliest memory of receiving a chocolate Easter bunny. I still lived at 1234 Grand Drive in Morristown, Tennessee. That was really the address. It feels like the movies made it up, but no, it's real. 1234 Grand Drive. And I remember receiving this chocolate Easter bunny that when I saw it, I was stoked. The Easter bunny was like longer than my arm is right now. And so and I don't know if you know this about me, I really like chocolate. Anybody else really like chocolate out there? That's what I'm talking about. So you're experiencing the same thing I am. You, as a child, I see this Easter bunny. It's 2 feet long, man. This thing's gargantuan. That thing's got to weigh 10 pounds. That's what I thought to myself. I'm like, this is the biggest chocolate Easter bunny of my life. I'm like, let's go. I'm like just so pumped as a child. I'm going to have at least enough chocolate for 2 days. I am so excited. And then I remember opening that Easter bunny and taking a bite out of the ear, and all of a sudden when I bite down into it, there's nothing on the inside. It looked like an Easter bunny, but it was hollow. It looked like it was going to be filling, but it actually had nothing on no sustenance in there. It looked like it was going to be incredible, but on the inside it was empty. It was hollow. A hollow faith can look perfect on the outside, but be empty on the inside. It can tick all the right boxes. It can show up to church on Sunday morning in small group. It can write a little check and put in the offering. It can do all the things that it can serve once a month. It can be really nice and kind to your neighbors. It can pray before meals. It can check all the boxes that make it look like it was right. But on the inside, it's hollow. It's lacking something deeper. The thing a hollow faith lacks is actually the presence of God in their life. Because it's more about the mechanics of the religion than it is the intimacy of the relationship. And this is a huge deal. Because this is something we're all susceptible to. Because I don't know about you, but I think we all like convenience. If you had the choice to drive here or walk here this morning, you'd probably pick drive. It's a little faster to get here. It won't be as hot and you're walking back when you get home. If you had the choice, you'd probably pick convenience most times. When it comes to our faith, we can't allow our conviction to yield to our convenience. Sardis, the church there, didn't lack activity. What they lacked, what they lost, was connection to the source. I would remind us of what Jesus said in John 15. He says this, yes, I am the vine and you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. But this last sentence, you can't miss it. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Not some things, not a few things. Apart from Christ, we can do nothing. So what do we do? What do we do to make sure that we don't find ourselves in the same place as the church of Sardis? As a church and as individuals, what do we do? And the answer is actually quite simple. It is to keep guard. The Bible is full of this reminder that Jesus tells the church in Sardis, what does he tell them? He says, wake up! You think you're spiritually alive, but I know you're spiritually dead. Wake up! This doesn't sometimes I wake up my kids like this. Hey guys, wake up. Sometimes I do that. I don't think that's what Christ was doing in this letter. I think he was going, hey, it's time to wake up. It's time to realize where you're at. Let the light bulb come on. Jesus says, wake up. And the Bible continues this language. 1 Peter 5:8, this is what it says. Stay alert. Watch out, because the great enemy, the devil, he prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Wake up! There is an enemy out there that wants to take you out. He prowls around. He walks around just looking for someone that he can devour. 1 Corinthians 16:13 says this, be on guard, stand firm in the faith, be courageous, be strong. Be courageous, be strong. The city of Sardis, it's interesting, was located on a high hill. For lack of a better explanation, here's how I explain it. They were located in a way that almost made the city look impenetrable, meaning that someone could not take siege to the city. It was located in a way that gave it this sense of protection. This sense of we cannot be taken, because the city was up like on a precipice. It had walls, and off some of the walls there was even rock structures and cliffs hanging down them. And many people in Sardis and many people around the world would look at the city of Sardis and assume it cannot be conquered. There's no way in. No one can get in there. And so this sort of thinking became a true thinking of the people in the city. So they would roam the walls, and they'd be like, yeah, we're fine, no worries, no worries. But one time there was an invading army that was coming to try to take Sardis. And when they get to Sardis, they're walking around assuming there's no way in. There'll be guards who would do their patrols occasionally and whatnot. And one time, this invading army, there was a soldier that was standing by that area where it looked like there's no way in there. He recognized that not only did it look like there's no way in, the people of Sardis probably believed it too, because there was no one ever guarding that area of the wall. But one day when he was standing out there and there was a man on patrol, he dropped his shield and it fell off the wall down into the rocks below. And this soldier who was coming to invade Sardis watches the guard climb over the wall, scale down the rocks, retrieve his shield, climb back up that same wall the same way he came, and begin on his journey again. And that's when it hit him. If he can scale that, we can scale that. And Sardis would be taken on that day by an army that scaled a wall that Sardis believed that there was no way they could do it anyway. Now here's what's crazy. Sardis was taken, I think, 7 times in its history. But 2 of the 7 times, it was taken at that exact same point. At that exact same spot. The spot that it assumed that there was no way possible that anyone could get in here. The enemy wants to take siege over your life. The enemy prowls around like a roaring lion looking for who it may devour. Watching for people who have not stayed alert and have fallen asleep, ready to pounce and destroy. So what does the Bible say? Wake up. Be on guard. Stay alert. My question this morning is, have you fallen asleep? Have you decided that yesterday's successes and sacrifices are enough and you don't need to do anymore? Have you decided that you've gone into the glory years and it's time to relax? When Paul was dying, the last letter he wrote, this will be a few years before he died, but it's the last letter he wrote in the Bible, 2 Timothy. This is what he says. He says, I have fought the good fight, I've finished the race, and I have remained faithful. I think about a man in the Old Testament, his name is Caleb. Caleb was with Joshua when they spied out the promised land, and they came back with a good report and everybody else came with a bad report, and God said this entire generation will die in the wilderness except for Caleb and Joshua before entering into the promised land. That entire generation does die in the wilderness over those 40 years, eating manna and getting stuffed on quail a couple times. And then they take the promised land. Moses dies and Joshua leads the army. They take the promised land. And then Joshua and Caleb have this conversation. It's somewhere in the early parts of Joshua, maybe chapter 10, chapter 14, somewhere around there. You can go read it. And Caleb says, Moses promised me that plot of land would be mine. And it's currently occupied. He goes, I was 40 when I left Egypt. I am 85 now, 45 years later, and I still have fight in my bones. I still have a fire in my soul, and I am going to go take that land. Let me go take that land at 85 years old. And the Bible says that is exactly what Caleb did. He didn't decide at 85 that I'm no longer involved with this. It's no big deal. Let this for the youngins now. No, he said, no, if I'm still alive, God still has something for me to do. I'm going to go take the land. And I wonder how many in the church today have went into early retirement, deciding that the bold faith moves are for the 20-year-olds. For the passionate worship, it's for the teenagers. For the things that people are willing to sacrifice and lay down. No, that's for the young people, the young crowd. No, friend, that is for all of us who still have breath in our lungs. The Bible doesn't say that praise and worship is for the young people, that sacrifice is for the young people. The Bible doesn't say that all the things of commitment to God is supposed to be more visible when you're young. No, I pray that when I'm old, I have more faith in my bones then than I do today. I pray that I'm still trusting God in big sacrifices and big beliefs that He can still do incredible things. I'm still praying that I can see people in the eyes and lead them to a loving relationship with Jesus Christ. I'm still believing that when I'm old and gray, that my great-great-grandkids will talk about me and say, my great-great-granddad, he is crazy for Jesus in the best of ways. I pray that my faith does not die. And friend, I pray that you pray that your faith does not die. Because that's the danger. Jesus says there's some of you, it's just barely alive. There's some of you, wake back up. It's because those who do will wear clothing of white. Textile industry was huge in Sardis as well, so this spoke their language. You'll wear white, no blemishes. White means victory. White was like after a political victory, a military victory, even an athletic victory. They would clothe their guys in all white, symbolized victorious. Jesus says, those who are faithful with me until the end, you will be victorious and clothed in white with no blemish.